Network 18 in association with Local Circles brings you one of the most exhaustive opinion polls. Here are the key highlights.
Bouquets and brickbats for the Modi government as it gears up to celebrate its second anniversary. Local Circles did an exhaustive opinion poll to gauge the mood of the nation. But first, here's the methodology. This is an online poll with only registered voters, 3.75 lakh to be precise. 46% of those polled live in Tier 1 cities, 26% in Tier 2 cities, and 27% are from Tier 3 and rural areas. Among those polled, 76% were male and 24% were female. Now for the findings. 46% believe that the government has met expectations, 18% say the government has exceeded expectations, while 36% believe that the performance so far has been disappointing. 43% say unemployment has not reduced in the last 2 years, while 35% say it has reduced. An overwhelming 61% believe corruption has reduced after the Modi government took charge. A majority of 60% believe doing business in India has become easier over the last 2 years. The government has also gotten a pat on the back for its efforts to bring in the goods and services tax. 61% say the centre has done enough to make the landmark legislation a reality. The government also scores well on infrastructure development. 72% say there has been infrastructure growth in the last 2 years. Among the government's pet projects, the direct benefit transfers tops the list as its biggest success so far. 22% say that Jan Dhan Yojana has been the most effective. The rest believe Swachh Bharat and Make in India have been the most effective. An overwhelming 90% believe India's image and influence across the globe has improved, and hope is still in the air. A majority of 68% believe that the Modi government will deliver on all the election promises over the next 3 years. Bureau Report, CNBC TV 18.
Well, those are the key highlights of a poll conducted by Local Circles. And joining us now to discuss those findings are Yatish Rajawat, the Chief Strategy Officer at Local Circle. He was driving this poll, and our very own Bhupendra Chaube with us as well. Yatish, Bhupendra, appreciate you joining us here on India Business Hour. Yatish, let me start by asking, what I found very interesting about this poll is when we talk about the many things on the economic agenda that this government has done, Make in India, Skill India, Startup India, and so on and so forth. I'm pleased to see that of all the economic achievements of this government, voters or people who you've polled have been very, very precise in terms of what has worked on the ground. 46% saying that the direct benefit transfer scheme is the most effective scheme of the Modi government. Were you surprised with that too?
Actually, yes. We don't think about this as the most impressive action of the government. But clearly, I think people connect with things that directly impact their wallet or their money that they're getting or not getting. So DBT in that sense, has had a much larger and more extent in terms of its impact on the population at large.
You're right there. And what's also interesting, Yatish, is that while 46% say that the DBT scheme is actually the most impressive economic reform of this government, the Jan Dhan Yojana, which this government has made a lot of noise about, 22%, that's fairly small actually in comparison, say that Jan Dhan Yojana is the most effective scheme of the government.
So, as you know, that the Jan Dhan Yojana is actually not too much, has not had much of an impact in urban India. It is more skewed towards the rural India. And though the noise by the government has been fairly high on Jan Dhan Yojana in terms of its impact and in terms of the number of accounts it's enrolled, but it does not seem that the population is too impressed by its impact on their lives. So that's why that the voter percentage there is quite low. 22% is low by any methodology. And this particular question was actually asked them to rate their 4 top issues which they think had the maximum impact.
Okay. Bhupen, if I were to look at the numbers, one area where the Modi government has clearly got an A+, 90% saying that India's global image has improved under the Modi government. So we can quibble in the media about how, whether he's spending most of his time outside of India and so on and so forth. But as far as those that have been polled are concerned, it seems to have worked.
And look at the time zone in which this poll has been done. As we speak, the Prime Minister is in Tehran. He comes back and then after a few days here, he heads off to America for a personal one-on-one session with the American President Barack Obama. I think the big picture which one picks up from this poll which has been done on CNBC TV 18 is that the Prime Minister's moves over these last 2 years of trying to rev up the Indian economy, of taking steps which would, if not now, but start yielding dividends, say, 4 years hence. I think that message is certainly going right down to the last man in the queue. Even when you speak about the direct benefits transfer scheme or the whole host of social welfare schemes which have been started off by the government, people may not be aware of many of these schemes at this point of time, but as we get set to be marking the second anniversary of this Modi government, the big picture that emerges is increasingly people are beginning to understand the larger import of economic policy making which is at work of this government. And as we've seen for Prime Minister Modi, economics and foreign policy is very, very closely interlinked. That's the message which is coming through.
You know, you're right, Bhupen and Yatish. Let me go on to one of the other poll promises that the Prime Minister had made before this government came to power, and that was to rid the country of corruption. And once again, very high rating, over 61% saying that corruption has in fact come down over the past 2 years. And this is clearly good news for the government because, again, despite all of the criticism coming in from the opposition that you made promises to bring back black money and you haven't done enough and so on and so forth, the poll clearly seems to suggest that the Modi government's performance rating on doing away with corruption is significantly high, Yatish.
You know, Shireen, this is one of the interesting things that we've done this poll last year also. And from last year till now, the people feel that corruption has actually come down more than they felt it last year. And as you know that in the last 2 years, we've not seen any large scam emerging or any scam emerging, at least at the central government level. So there is a lot of noise around the fact that, you know, black money and all. Now, black money is actually not corruption of the government. Black money is money which has gone out of the country and, you know, is not. So we tend to confuse these issues together. But
that's right.
People at large clearly see that the central government has been able to manage and curb corruption, certainly at the central government level. State government is another matter altogether.
You know, Bhupen, if I were to look at the sum and substance of the message that this poll is throwing up, at the end of year 2, it's a high performance rating coming in for the Modi government across the board.
Much like, if you remember, when Manmohan Singh had taken over as Prime Minister in 2004 from Atal Bihari Vajpayee, most polls which were conducted at that mid-term level of 2006-2007, by which the schemes like MNREGA scams or a whole host of other similar social welfare schemes which have been launched by Prime Minister Modi, a whole host of schemes were launched even then. And I distinctly remember most polls which were done between 2006 and 2007 gave Manmohan Singh a very high performance rating. Of course, the story changed dramatically once 2G and Commonwealth Games and a whole host of other scams started unfolding 2009 onwards. Similarly, for Prime Minister Modi, despite 2015 being a bad year electorally, losing the states of Delhi and Bihar, it seems the economic vision which was unleashed by the Prime Minister in 2014, slowly but surely, people are beginning to get an idea of what the Prime Minister is really attempting to achieve. And I think that is what is being captured in this poll.
Absolutely. Well, Bhupen, Yatish, appreciate you joining us here with your thoughts on the findings of the Local Circles poll. Over 3 lakh people have been polled across Tier 1 and Tier 2 cities. Yatish's team has been working hard to put that together. We'll get you more details on the findings through the day tomorrow on CNBC TV 18. But thanks very much to the two of you for joining us here this evening. Well, we would